When I left the skating rink, I felt sort of hungry, so I went in this drugstore and had a Swiss cheese sandwich and a malted, and then I went in a phone booth, and I thought maybe I might give old Jane another buzz and see if she was home yet. I mean, I had the whole evening free, and I thought I'd give her a buzz, and if she was home yet, take her dancing or something somewhere. I never danced with her or anything the whole time I knew her. I saw her dancing once though. She looked like a very good dancer. It was at this 4th of July dance at the club. I didn't know her too well then, and I didn't think I ought to cut in on her date. She was dating this terrible guy, Al Pike, that went to co-ed. I didn't know him too well, but he was always hanging around the swimming pool. He wore those white latex kind of swimming shorts, and he was always going off the high dive. He did the same lousy old half gainer all day long. It was the only dive he could do, but he thought he was very hot stuff, all muscle and no brains. Anyway, that's who Jane dated that night. I couldn't understand it. I swear I couldn't. After we started going around together, I asked her how come she could date a show-off bastard like Al Pike. Jane said he wasn't a show-off. She said he had an inferiority complex. She acted like she felt sorry for him or something, and she wasn't just putting it on. She meant it. It's a funny thing about girls. Every time you mention some guy that's strictly a bastard, very mean, or very conceited and all, and when you mention it to the girl, she'll tell you he has an inferiority complex. Maybe he has, but that still doesn't keep him from being a bastard, in my opinion. Girls, you never know what they're gonna think. I once got this girl, Roberta Walsh's roommate, a date with a friend of mine. His name was Bob Robinson, and he really had an inferiority complex. You could tell he was very ashamed of his parents and all, because they said he don't and she don't, and stuff like that. They weren't very wealthy, but he wasn't a bastard or anything. He was a very nice guy. But this Roberta Walsh's roommate didn't like him at all. She told Roberta he was too conceited, and the reason she thought he was conceited was because he happened to mention to her that he was captain of the debating team, a little thing like that, and she thought he was conceited. The trouble with girls is, if they like a boy, no matter how big of a bastard he is, they'll say he has an inferiority complex. And if they don't like him, no matter how nice of a guy he is, or how big of an inferiority complex he has, they'll say he's conceited. Even smart girls do it.
The part that got me was there was a lady sitting next to me that cried all through the goddamn picture. The phonier it got, the more she cried. You'd have thought she did it because she was kind-hearted as hell, but I was sitting next to her and she wasn't. She had this little kid with her that was bored as hell and had to go to the bathroom, but she wouldn't take him. She kept telling him to sit still and behave himself. She was about as kind-hearted as a goddamn wolf. You take somebody that cries their goddamn eyes out over phony stuff in the movies, and 9 times out of 10, they're the mean bastards at heart. I'm not kidding. After the movie was over, I started walking down to the Wicker Bar, where I was supposed to meet old Carl Luce. And while I walked, I sort of thought about war and all. Those movies always do that to me. I don't think I could stand war if I had to go. I really couldn't. It wouldn't be too bad if they just take you out and shoot you or something, but you have to stay in the army so goddamn long. That was terrible. My brother DB was in the army for 4 goddamn years. He was in the war too. He landed on D-Day and all, but I really think that he hated the army worse than the war. I was practically a child at the time, but I remember when he used to come home after the furlough and all, and all he did was lie in bed, particularly. He hardly ever even came into the living room. Later, when he was overseas and war was all, he didn't get wounded or anything, and he didn't have to shoot nobody. All he had to do was drive some cowboy general around all day in a common car. He once told Ollie and I that if he had to shoot anyone, he wouldn't have known which direction to shoot in. He said that the army was practically as full of bastards as the Nazis were. I remember Allie once asked him, wasn't it sort of good that he was in the war because he was a writer and it would give him a lot to write about and all? He made Allie go to go get his baseball mitt, and then he asked him who was the best war poet, Rupert Brooke or Emily Dickinson. Allie said Emily Dickinson. I don't know too much about it myself because I don't really read poetry. But I do know it'd drive me crazy if I had been there in the army and be with a bunch of guys like Ackley or Stradlater or old Marsus all the time, marching with them and all. I was a Boy Scout once for about a week, and I couldn't even stand looking at the back of a guy's neck in front of me. They kept telling you to look at the back of the guy's neck in front of you. I swear if there's ever another war, they'd better just take me out and stick me in front of a firing squad. I won't object. What gets me about DB, though, he hated war so much, and yet he got me a book. He got me to read this book, A Feral to Arms, last summer. He said it was terrific. That's why I can't understand. It had this guy named Lieutenant Henry and was supposed to be a nice guy and all. I don't see how DB could hate the army and war and all so much and still like a phony like that.
Anyway, I gave old Jane a buzz again, but her phone didn't answer, so I had to hang up. Then, I had to look through my address book to see who the hell might be available for the evening. The trouble was, though, my address book only had about 3 people in it. Jane and this man, Mr. Antolini. That was my teacher at Elkton Hills, and my father's office number. I keep forgetting to put people's names in. So what I finally did, I gave old Carl Luce a buzz. He graduated from the Houghton School after I left. He was about 3 years older than I was, and I didn't like him too much, but he was one of those very intellectual guys. He had the highest IQ of any boy at Houghton, and I thought he might want to have dinner with me somewhere and have a slightly intellectual conversation. He was very enlightening sometimes, so I gave him a buzz. He went to Columbia now, but he lived on 65th Street and all, and I knew he would be home. When I got him on the phone, he said he couldn't make it to dinner, but that he would meet me for a drink at 10 o'clock at the Wicker Bar on 54th. I think he was pretty surprised to hear from me. I once called him a fat-ass phony. I had quite a bit of time to kill till 10 o'clock, so what I did, I went to the movies at Radio City. It was probably the worst thing I could have done, but it was near. I couldn't think of anything else. I came in when the goddamn stage show was on. The Rockettes were kicking their heads off the way they do when they're all in line with their arms around each other's waists. The audience applauded like mad, and some guy behind me kept saying to his wife, "You know what this is? That's precision. He killed me." Then after the Rockettes.
The part that got me was there was a lady sitting next to me that cried all through the goddamn picture. The funnier it got, the more she cried. You'd have thought she did it because she was kind-hearted as hell, but I was sitting next to her, and she wasn't. She had this little kid with her that was bored as hell and had to go to the bathroom, but she wouldn't take him. She kept telling him to sit still and behave himself. She was about as kind-hearted as a goddamn wolf. You take somebody that cries their goddamn eyes out over phony stuff in the movies, and 9 times out of 10, they're mean bastards at heart. I'm not kidding. After the movie was over, I started walking down to the Wicker Bar, where I was supposed to meet old Carl Luce, and while I walked, I sort of thought about war and all. Those war movies always do that to me. I don't think I could stand if I had to go to war. I really couldn't. It wouldn't be too bad if they'd just take you out and shoot you or something. But you have to stay in the army so goddamn long. That's the whole trouble. My brother DB was in the army for about 4 goddamn years. He was in the war too. He landed on D-Day and all, but I really think he hated the army worse than the war. I was practically a child at the time, but I remember when he used to come home on furlough and all. And all he did was lie in his bed practically. He hardly ever came in the living room. Later, he went overseas and was in the war and all. He didn't get wounded or anything, and he didn't have to shoot anybody. All he had to do was drive some cowboy general around all day in a command car. He once told Allie and I that if he had to shoot anybody, he wouldn't have known which direction to shoot in. He said the army was practically as full of bastards as the Nazis were. I remember Allie once asked him, wasn't it sort of good that he was in the war because he was a writer and it gave him a lot to write about and all. He made Allie go get his baseball mitt, and then he asked him who the best war poet, Rupert Brooke or Emily Dickinson. Allie said Emily Dickinson. I don't know too much about it myself because I don't read much poetry, but I do know it'd drive me crazy if I had to be in the army with a bunch of guys like Ackley and Stradlater and old Maurice at the time, marching with them and all. I was in Boy Scouts once for about a week, and I couldn't even stand looking at the guy at the back's neck in front of me. They kept telling you to look at the back of the guy's neck in front of you. I swear if there's even another war, they better just take me out and stick me in front of the firing squad. I wouldn't object. What gets me about DB, though, he hated the war so much, and yet he got me to read this book, A Farewell to Arms, last summer. He said it was so terrific. That's what I can't understand. I had this guy named Lieutenant Henry that was supposed to be a nice guy and all. I don't see how DB could hate the Army and war all so much and still like a phony like that. I mean, for instance, I don't see how he could like a phony book like that and still like one by Ring Lardner, or that other one he's so crazy about, The Great Gatsby. DB got sore when I said that and said I was too young and all to appreciate it, but I don't think so. I told him I liked Ring Lardner and The Great Gatsby and all. I did too. I was crazy about The Great Gatsby, old sport. That killed me. Anyway, I'm sort of glad they got the atomic bomb invented. If there's ever another war, I'm gonna sit the hell on top of it. I'll volunteer for it. I swear to God I will.